bright golden haze on the meadow. There's a bright golden haze on the meadow. The corn is as high as an elephant's eye, and it looks like it's climbing clear up to the sky. Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I got a beautiful feeling, everything's going my way. All the cattle are standing like statues. All the cattle are standing like statues. They don't turn their heads as they see me ride by. But a little brown maverick is winking her eye. Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I got a beautiful feeling, everything's going my way. All the sounds of the earth are like music. All the sounds of the earth are like music. The breeze is so busy it don't miss a tree. And old weeping willow is laughing at me. Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I got a beautiful feeling, everything's going my way. Oh, what a beautiful day.
Well, the sun is surely sinking down, but the moon is slowly rising. So this old world must still be spinning around, and I still love you. So close your eyes. You can close your eyes, it's alright. I don't know no love songs, and I can't sing the blues anymore, but I can sing this song, and you can sing this song when I'm gone. It won't be long before another day. We're gonna have a good time, and no one's gonna take that time away. You can stay as long as you like. So close your eyes. You can close your eyes, it's alright. I don't know no love songs, and I can't sing the blues anymore, but I can sing this song, and you can sing this song when I'm gone.
that I heard of once in a lullaby song, way over the rainbow skies are blue. And the
But though they may be parted, there is still a chance that they will see. There will be an answer. Let it be. 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 Yeah, there will be an answer. Let it be. 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 Whisper words of wisdom. Let it be. Is cloudy, there is still a light that shines on me. Shine until tomorrow, let it be. I wake up to the sound of music. Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom. Let it be. Oh, let it be. Let it be. Let it be. There will be an answer. Let it be. 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 Whisper words of wisdom. Let it be.
Dying, Christ destroyed our death, and rising, Christ restored our life. Here and now, dear friends, we are God's children. What we shall be has not yet been revealed, but we know that when he appears, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. Jesus said, I am the resurrection and I am the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, yet shall they live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. There is at least a twofold task before us as we come today to remember and celebrate the life of Marvin. The first is to acknowledge he is gone. We gather here to confront death, to be reminded we are all on that journey together. We come here to grieve and to mourn, to share our tears. We gather here to acknowledge, however long the life, we are rarely ever ready to say goodbye. It is an important task and work of grief to gather together, to trust we are immersed in the presence of God, and to lean on one another for comfort and grace. However, we also gather today to acknowledge death does not have the final word. As a people of faith, we gather to witness to the faith and strength and life and presence of Marvin as well as our own. We come here to say we believe disease and struggle, suffering and heartache, sorrow, the struggle and demands and heartache of dementia, and even death never have the last word. God has the last word, and that word is always life. That's why we remember those things of Marvin that are meaningful to you. Acknowledging the struggles and difficulties, clinging to the joy and the good times. These memories begin to fill that room, that place and space, the empty favorite chair, the empty chair at the table, the empty place in your hearts. These memories become blessing for us and help us keep Marvin alive in our hearts forevermore. And so, as a people of faith, embraced and immersed in the very presence of God in Christ, we remember Marvin. We gather in grief, perhaps. Yet we celebrate a life that obviously touched you and so many others. A life that lives on away from us, yet present in that great cloud of witnesses that surrounds us even now. And as we come together today, we pray the Spirit will indeed lead us through this moment and all the moments to come. We must know and trust the way home in our hearts as we open our lives in hope and love that the Spirit will give us the grace that comes with knowing the presence of the one who will not let us go. The one who will take our hand and lead us home. And in that may we find comfort for our pain and tears, hope in the midst of our sorrow, and even here in the presence of death, resurrection. Would you join in the song "In the Garden"? It's in the United Methodist hymnal on page 314. The words will also be on the screen. Hear these words from our scriptures from the prophet Micah in chapter 6. With what shall I come before God and bow myself on high? Shall I come with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will God be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000 rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? God has told you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God? And from the Gospel of John in chapter 10, Jesus is speaking. I am the gate. Whoever enters by me will be saved and will come in and go out and find pasture. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. Let us pray. O Spirit who fills all of us, you who carry us, lead us, hold us. When joy abounds, dance with us. When grief weighs us down, weep with us. Where we are broken and scattered, draw us together. When happiness fills our hearts, laugh with us. When we feel lost and alone, stay with us. And in each moment, may we share our light that others might know of their own. And being in and with you, may we always be mindful we are never alone, gathered in by the love of Christ from whom we can never be separated. Amen. It is always a profound and special time when family and friends are able to come and share memories of the importance of our loved ones. Today, Francis and Roger have asked to come and share at this time. Come.
Welcome, everyone, and welcome especially Marvin's class of 74 who are reunioning this weekend, their 50th, and welcome especially to those traveling at a distance to get here to be with us. We've all come to share memories, many memories. Our live stream this morning is meant to include voices of a number of people who have known Marvin and been close to him in Sacramento too. People who are helping us shine a light on what this amazing man, our brother Marvin, Dr. Gates, really was. Rare that Marvin said an unkind word about anyone, and the same could be said about others about him. Marvin was the kind of guy who one could find instantly engaging. Repeatedly, people mentioned his robust laugh, his good-natured spirit, and his generous heart. So my husband Roger is going to help me with this because I know that I wouldn't be able to get through this. So thank you, Roger.
Yeah, I want to fill out a few of the details. A lot of you don't know Marvin. He moved to California, and I just wanted to start with a story, and many of these are things that Francis has collected. Some of these are my words as well, but most of them are Francis's. But just to exemplify who Marvin was, a story from the late 1990s when he had started his own pulmonary practice in Sacramento, and he was busy as all get out, seeing patients all day, going to the ICU in the afternoon and finishing up with rounds late in the day, and he had a couple of employees who were very loyal to him and just really loved this guy. So they tell this story to give you an idea of Marv's character, both professionally and personally. It was his 50th birthday, and these two employees, Jody Kramer, who was office manager of 12 years, and who described Marv as her best boss ever. A wonderful person. He was always upbeat, went the extra mile for his patients. And the other employee who worked with Jody, Angela Whiteside. And they tell the story about Marv turning 50, and they wanted to celebrate him, this beloved boss. So what do? That morning they come in and they decide to be Dr. Marvin lookalikes. They have a photocopy of Marv's face, which they put over their own face with strapped it on, and then they put on a white lab coat and a stethoscope. And this lasted all day. They were in costume, being Dr. Marvin's, which of course delighted Marvin, I'm sure, but also he must have been hiring for a good sense of humor in addition to all their other qualifications. So it gives you a flavor that this was not an ordinary doctor's office, not an ordinary doctor, that he could be so dedicated and also hold these things so lightly and engage his employees. So how did he get to be this way? Well, I want to tell you a few stories from his past. He obviously grew up on a farm with a father who was very hardworking and, from what I understand, very strong-willed, and I think Marvin adopted both of those characteristics. At the same time, he had this big heart that was really his mother's compassionate, big heart, and I think he blended these two to be this hardworking guy who loved work and he loved play. He would certainly do chores after school and in the summer. I think he learned that self-reliance, independence were really important features, and he kept those all of his life. Growing up in that family, it wasn't like there were a lot of frills, but, you know, he had family who loved him, close neighbors. He had teachers who really cared about their students. And he cared about family, and you know, he'd go on the one big vacation trip every year was a trip to Tipton, Oklahoma in the middle of August, and some of his cousins are here today, so you know about that. You see Marvin as this sweet, handsome kid with a ready smile. You see all the pictures. A serious student, but also he loved music, and he discovered this in high school, playing Curly as Oklahoma to much acclaim. And his musical passion really lasted his whole life, with taking guitar lessons and singing bass with the Sacramento Choral Society. So he also had a lifelong interest in sports cars, much to the dismay of his dad. He had a bit of a rebellious streak as a teenager, and older brother Max, who's here, helped him purchase this convertible Jaguar that you see in the pictures. So, you know, Max did a lot to introduce Marvin to flying planes and astronomy and taking trips to Tucson, Arizona. So they were quite a pair. Now, he graduated high school 50 years ago, as those from the reunion know. He was in KU for many years, culminating with a medical degree in 1982. He also earned a specialty in pulmonary medicine, and even in this intense schooling, you can only imagine, he still went on these fun trips with friends to the great outdoors, camping, and everything else. He did pursue this advanced degree in international and internal medicine, and at that point he had a brown Jensen Healey sports car, continuing his passion for that, and he drove down to Miami General Hospital. He was in the emergency room, so you can only imagine how that experience exposed him to almost everything. But even then, he was on duty one night when he had to intubate someone, and turned out to be an infamous mafia mob boss who had come into the emergency room to be intubated. He did that, and I understand that family would rib him that if he didn't do it right, he must have been looking out for his own throat that day. Luckily, everything went well, although that guy passed on sometime later. But there are many other tales of adventures, which I think I'll let Steve and Clark go into at some length in the 1980s. But the big news was he moved to California. Marvin moved to California. He did have some connections there. I had a very close relationship with Carolyn Odell, and other Kansans tended to move out to the Bay Area, so he had a lot of friends, many of them in the health profession as well. But you see this guy who was in his 30s, full of enthusiasm, full of life, taking in California, handsome guy. He decided to stay. He found a 1920s vintage home that he just loved, just east of Sacramento in a small town, Fair Oaks, which really had this small town feel that he wanted. And, if you were to look in his garage, pull up a garage door in his house, and he had two garages, mind you. He had, in one garage, he had 3 motorcycles, 4 touring bikes, then he had a kayak, and later on he had a vintage Porsche 911, 1996 vintage, in another garage. So he was really into the California lifestyle, and flat out building this private practice, but nonetheless having fun with all of his toys. People said you'd see him on a Friday afternoon after all of his rounds, pulling away in his car with a snowboard and skis strapped to the top of the car, going out to Tahoe for a weekend of fun. So he would do all of these outdoor activities, and in 2001 he even joined his friend Kim Atherton and a dozen other guys biking and motorcycling through the Swiss Alps. So he knew how to have fun. There were a lot of other family connections and trips out to California, and at one point he rented an RV, and Gary and his wife Buffy and all 6 children joined him for a trip out to see the Gates families in the Central Valley of California. So a lot of connections, and of course he came back here to Newton for a lot of holidays. But it was 2013 that things really shifted for him. He was diagnosed with early heart disease, and it forced him to scale back on a lot of these extreme sports that he was involved in. So he then also quit his private practice of many years and went back to working with PMA, which was a respected pulmonary practice in Sacramento. So he kept doing that and serving his patients. But there was also more engagement with music. He sang bass with the Choral Arts Society there, and did that for 20 years, and took guitar lessons with his friend Lee Riggs, and mutual friend Stuart Walthall was involved in that. So when we got there, and after his death, he had 6 guitars, to give you some idea of how hot he was for music. But in 2020, the early stages of the pandemic, he decided to retire. And this was a mixed blessing, because without the camaraderie and structure of work, he really fell into a certain amount of isolation. A lot of things weren't open. He wasn't in his choir practice at that point. And he experienced a health decline, which included some cognitive decline. So we really may never know the full extent of why this dementia started when it did, but suffice it to say, he really could no longer manage his own affairs. And being headstrong, he wasn't really willing to take too much advice from Francis and Max and others. But the good news was, in this last chapter of his life, he stayed in his home, which he really just loved his home and that community he was in. He had caregivers, and one of the caregivers, Satwant Sahota, you saw a picture of her here, became very close with her, really became a friend as well as a caregiver. She'd drive him to medical appointments and exercise at the gym and things like that, and they had this banter, which we would always see, of humor together. So they'd go to a medical appointment and he'd weigh in a little heavier than he was supposed to, and he'd say, "You're putting your foot on the scale." So I thought, well, that's why I weigh that much. He was always joking with her. So I think the good news was, at that point, you'd have a phone conversation with Marv, and there was always some kind of laughter, some kind of lightness to indicate he was still enjoying his life. And it wasn't that he didn't want to go out on his motorcycle or get in his Porsche, and he never could quite understand why he could not find his keys at that point. But that was the situation. He couldn't drive anymore. It was a little hard to see somebody that active their whole life having to, hunker down a little more. But he had an amazingly good attitude about it, and I think in those last 3.5 years, he did amazingly well to continue to enjoy his life, and we're really deeply grateful for that. After his death from heart failure on May 9th, Francis and I went out to California to sift through a lot of his 30 years of accumulations at that house, and I sort of left the breadcrumbs of all the memories that made him who he was. And we learned a lot about just how beloved he was and what a humble man he was, finding letters from his patients who were so appreciative of how his care really was so important to them. So he lived a life dedicated to service. He lived a life dedicated to joy and being loyal to his friends and family. His voice, I think, was an instrument of grace. A kind, humble man that we will miss deeply. Thank you, Dr. Marv.
Steve and Clark, would you like to come and share?
Marv was such a great friend. Viewing photos and slides over the past 30 years brought back many special memories. When we were in residency together, we took an amazing trip up to Glacier National Park with a couple of girlfriends, backpacking up through the central part of the park, moose country, bear country, all the way up into Canada. Great memories. Another time, we surprised Steve Shields in Egypt, who didn't know Marv was coming, adventuring along the Nile, the pyramids, and to a remote village that only Steve could have taken us to. In 1988, my soon-to-be wife, Erin, and I loaded up a large U-Haul truck halfway in Washington, D.C., drove to Kansas City, and picked up Marv. Much to Erin's chagrin, he wasn't actually ready when we arrived, but we helped to pack glass boxes, cleaned the apartment, loaded the truck, and caravaned on dropping Marv off in Sacramento before proceeding on to the Bay Area ourselves to begin new lives in California. As part of a large and close-knit group of friends, mostly from Newton, some from other parts of Kansas, a couple from California, we camped, hiked, skied, sailed, and adventured together for many years. In 1992, we began an annual tradition of renting houses up on the north coast of California, a place called Sea Ranch, a place that Kevin Whiting actually discovered, taking us there on a guy's trip. Once the women in our lives had a taste of Sea Ranch, we never went back to camping. And every October for 30 years, we celebrated Marv's birthday there. One year, I gave him a set of lighted bocce balls. And on a moonlit evening, we played well into the night, having so much fun, laughing and joking in our yard, overlooking a bluff on the ocean. Sea Ranch is remote. The houses are spread very far apart. But on that evening, we were surprised by a couple of officers arriving, investigating what was going on, reprimanding us, and encouraging us to go back inside. After that, Marv would never bring those lighted bocce balls back to Sea Ranch. Despite cajoling and reminding, he just wouldn't do it. So ultimately, I gave up and gifted another set to another friend so we might play again. When I became interested in guitar, Marv gave me his, a really nice Taylor. I think I just learned it was only one of 6. He taught me how to snowboard, and I loved it. Never went back to skiing. My children grew up snowboarding. Marv joined us on many family trips to the snow, which always included Jim Hoffin's family, sometimes Clark, and my 3 children, as well as Jim's daughters, Laura and Lindsay, very fondly called him Uncle Marv. On behalf of the West Coast friends and family who aren't able to be here, we all miss Marv. His hearty laugh, easygoing nature, adventuresome spirit, sense of humor, kindness, generosity. I could always count on Marv behind the wheel of a sailboat. We were all lucky to have you in our lives, Marv. We miss you. Thanks.
As I think of the many years that Marv and I were friends, it's soothing to be here in the place we both love and called home. It's cathartic to have a celebration of Marv's life of over 50, of our 50-year class reunion on the same day, and I look forward to reuniting with many old friends and classmates over the weekend. Marv will be missed. Marv and I were not that close in high school. He was a charismatic, handsome, homecoming queen escort in his convertible Jaguar. I was not. Last night, my sister, and actually yesterday afternoon, Steve's sister reminded me that he played Curly in the play Oklahoma, and to her, and I think to Steve's sister, that says it all. I had forgotten that, of course, but we saw some of that in the slide. We got to know each other much better in college when I would visit mutual friends at KU, and later when I moved to Kansas City for my first job, and Marv was in medical school at KU. After 4 years working in KC, I moved briefly to Chicago and ultimately to San Francisco Bay, the Bay Area. And I was fortunate, as has been mentioned here today, to have several other Newton High School friends already living in the area. Soon after, as Steve just said, Marv and Steve moved west, so another bonus for me. With these homies and some newfound friends, we embarked on many, as Steve described, camping, hiking, skiing, sailing trips, really exploring the West and getting to know our new friends on the West Coast. Some of these expeditions were a backpacking and camping trip to Havasupai Falls in Arizona. In this particular incident, or hike I should say, after 12 miles from the trailhead, we set up camp on the river's edge and made dinner that night. And upon returning to our camp, Marv discovered that his tent and backpack were gone, either from an intense windstorm that had come up briefly, or from a raccoon or some other critter that had pull it into the fast-moving current of the river. I have to admit that I was less than generous when it came to sharing my tent with Marv. Although he was a pulmonologist and had a successful sleep disorder and snoring practice, I had camped with him enough to know that he was unable to mitigate his own loud snoring. Ultimately, I gave in, and to my pleasure, the sound of the river, the exhaustion of the hike, allowed for a good night's sleep for all. Marv, as has been alluded to today by everyone, always was good-natured and about his misfortune and never complained. Another occasion that I still remember fondly, we were driving up to Sea Ranch, aforementioned by Steve, and it's 3 hours north of San Francisco. It was one of those torrential, traditional coastal storms, and the rain was intense. And as Roger mentioned, Marv had a passion for fast cars and motorcycles, and on that night, after some badgering, he finally let me drive his Porsche 911. It was always more fun to drive than to ride, quite frankly, that car. But it was dark and isolated at the ranch, and the road to the house was marked with a mile marker that I had overlooked. Marv called it out. I was likely driving way too fast and hit the brakes. We did a 360 on the road. Marv was also generous about that incident, but it definitely limited my access to his fast-moving vehicles in the future. Several years after I moved to the Bay Area, I bought a duplex with Randy Smith, who is here today, and his wife Sydney in San Francisco. They started a family, and we hosted birthday parties, certainly for their children, in our small backyard and garage. I was reminded when viewing numerous old photos, as we've talked about today, how good Marv was with children. During one of these face-painting events for the kids, it was Randy's son's birthday, Logan, I believe. Although we all tried, Marv was way better at painting their faces than the rest of us. So as the evening went on, no adult could compare, and no adult got a chance to paint their faces, only Marv. And he did a tremendous job, by the way. Marv was an athlete, a talented musician, a person who cared about others, and always a friend. Like many of you here and listening today, I will miss him. And I also want to say one other thing in closing about the situation at the end of his life. During the pandemic and after, as was mentioned here by Roger and certainly by Francis, Marv began to experience a cognitive decline. He was able to live his life, though, with some assistance in the home and surroundings he loved. This would not have been possible without the direct involvement of his wonderful, loving sister and her husband, Roger. I want to recognize him today for allowing Marv to live where and how he wanted to live. Thank you.
Good morning. Marv and I have been friends for a long time. We were in that play Oklahoma together. He would have gotten the Tony Award. I wouldn't have been nominated for supporting actor, but that was when we really became friends. And we really shared through the years, one of our main things we experienced together was our love of music. And especially at Sea Ranch. Marv was a real observer and an active listener, and also a man of few words. And so if you didn't know him very well, or you weren't paying attention, it it was easy to miss sometimes just how much was in there. Because he would say things in very brief ways that had mountains underneath them. And I share that because of the song that he introduced me to that I'm going to share with you today. But we would get together at Sea Ranch, and every year we stayed in the same house usually, and Marvin always had the most amazing high-quality gadgets. He was the first to have that like tiny little Bose speaker that sounded like a full orchestra in the room, but his headphones were unbelievable. You could hear the bow hit the cello, or you could hear, if it was rap, because you never knew what kind of music it was going to be. If it was rap, you could hear the breath. If it was a piano, you could hear the hammer hit the string. Well, in this particular year, he had a song for me. And it was the one I'm going to share with you today, and it's a Chopin nocturne. And he explained to me, I was blown away by this song. And it's so much like Marvin in so many ways, but it was the last song played on Polish radio when the Nazis invaded. It was their closing statement. And it was the first song played on Polish radio when the Allies liberated Poland. And like Marvin, this song said the absolute most with the total range of human emotion and the human experience in 3 short pages, in the most distilled melody that said way more than just that simple melody itself. And so that was Marvin, a man of few words, but and when we finished listening to the song, and I was just spellbound by it, when I took the headphones off, he said, "It's all in there." Short words. I just said a whole bunch to describe it. And like this song, my friend Marvin, it was all in there. I hope I do him justice.
Thank you to all of you who shared. I'm a little hesitant to have to follow that, but that was beautiful. You know, if I've listened to and read the stories of Marvin's life, a poem came to mind I thought appropriate for this morning. It's a poem by Rainer Maria Rilke. It speaks to life, it speaks to connection with the Spirit, and I believe it speaks to a part of why we gather here today, to remember and celebrate Marvin and what he meant to those of you who knew him well. Here's what the poet writes. The Spirit speaks to each of us as we are made, then walks with us silently out of the night. These are the words we dimly hear. You, sent out beyond your recall, go to the limits of your longing. Embody me, flare up like flame, make big shadows I can move in. Let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final. Don't let yourself lose me. Nearby is the country they call life. You will know it by its seriousness. Give me your hand. We gather here this morning to be about the sacred act of not only giving God thanks for the life and love of Marvin, we gather as well to be about the sacred act of remembering. We gather here to remember and celebrate one who I believe knew the seriousness of life that the poet spoke, who knew the joys of life, flaring up like big flames, making shadows. One who trusted the family and the gifts in and with which he was raised. Marvin loved his family. He shared with me memories of a young child sleeping in the clubhouse on hot summer nights because that was the coolest place to sleep. The big windows open, a breeze, and gazing up at the star-filled night with his brother. The way he was introduced to and greeted and treated the in-laws as they entered the family. You're going to love my brother. And with Marvin, you really did gain a brother. The way he welcomed you into the family. You want to go for a run? No judgment, no lack of trust, just total acceptance and welcome. When he was home for the holidays, Marvin always, you said, mashed the potatoes. And it sounded like the way you described it, with gusto. He helped with the dishes or whatever else needed to be done in the kitchen. He didn't like to cook, but if he couldn't be home for the holidays, he made sure the family had a honey-baked ham for dinner. Even in his battle with the cognitive loss, he still trusted his family and his siblings. There was still that connection he didn't lose, which is important for such a terrible disease, to still see those pieces of our loved ones that continue to live and thrive within them. His work inspired younger family members to enter the medical field as they looked up to Marvin as an example in his professional success. He was good with kids. His niece, who affectionately called him George. Marvin loved his family. Loved and committed to his work as well. You all have mentioned that. A deep work ethic instilled in him by his upbringing on the family farm. Though it was said from an early age he just seemed like a doctor. He had a strong personality, strong-headed, strong opinions and views, though you said always caring for people. I think what rose to the top for me was your emphasis on how beloved of a doctor he was to his patients. Took a deep interest in his patients, indicated by the letters you mentioned. Covered for his colleagues in the group who had families and needed to take time away, picking up slack wherever he could. And you said a great boss and a hard worker. Overall, though you did mention he was a little stubborn. Overall, though, what I heard you say, that he was a good patient. His caregivers knew how to care for him and give him the attention and direction he needed. They enjoyed caring for him. You said once, after being in care for several months, he just decided he wanted to go home. So he walked out of the facility and started walking home, which was a significant distance. But Marvin, as you said, was a good doctor. Not only did he work hard, as heard earlier, he knew how to have fun. Snowboarding, skiing, driving the sports car, being in the choral society. He said it was fun to have adventures with Marvin, and you had many. And even when he was unable to do those things anymore, he still had that stubbornness, that great laugh, still had the presence of mind, though I think to know that he knew something was missing, as like you said, he always wondered where his car keys were. He worked hard and he played hard. Mostly those, as the stories have been shared, I believe Marvin was a servant. That's what he did. That's who he was. That's what I heard. His life was about service, driven by his servant heart. You said he was a humble guy, didn't need attention, though appreciated recognition of his hard work. When he was at home with the family around him, he could simply be content being there, being present, happy with a book or whatever he was working on. I think that work ethic and that presence applied not only to his family and his fun, but also to his work, to be the best he could be. In a lot of ways, you said Marvin was married to his job. His connection to nature, being outdoors, born out of his upbringing on the farm. His connection with his work and patience, born out of his upbringing by his family. It's the reason I chose the passage from the prophet Micah for this morning. As I listened to the stories of his life, it seemed evident to me he knew the value, the commitment to what the prophet was speaking, to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with the Spirit. It's the reason I chose the passage from John, because I believe Marvin knew life and knew it abundantly. There's another interpretation of that passage that I like, maybe even a little better, that has Christ say, "I've come that they might have life and have it to the full." I believe Marvin had life to the full. And so we pause here in this moment and express our gratitude to God for the life of Marvin, the things he showed you, taught you, shared with you. And may we find comfort in knowing Marvin has been swept up into the presence of God and that great cloud of witnesses that surrounds us now. And I have to wonder, if we listen very carefully, if we might hear those words from our tradition. Well done, good, and faithful servant. We find strength and hope in knowing, immersed in the very presence of God, we are still connected to Him. And in that knowledge and faith, perhaps every time you see a sports car speeding down the interstate, every time you see skis or kayaks strapped to the top of a car, maybe the next holiday as you mash the potatoes for family dinner, or just find yourself content to sit and read a book. Every time you walk out on a starlit night, or sit in the presence of your caring doctor, and Marvin is still here, right here, in your hearts. And that knowledge and presence perhaps can give you hope, comfort, and strength. For along this journey here on this good green earth, we are invited to open our arms and embrace one another and the world, living and loving and laughing. For we are immersed in a sea of love, filled within, surrounded without, buoyed in the eternal connection one to another. And whether it's a few blocks, a few towns, a state or states, miles and miles that stand between us, or even that expansive mystery we call death, we are connected just as surely as if we stand side by side. As the poet Rumi writes, love is the whole thing. We are merely pieces. For in the Spirit of Christ there is nothing that can separate us from love. And this is so. Amen. Would you join with me in the song Morning Has Broken as the words are on the screen? hear this tribute to Marvin from the Sacramento Choral Society. Just a note before the closing prayer, there is a lunch provided in the fellowship hall back through that room and into the next, if you would choose to stay and have a meal with the family. Let us pray. God of grace and God of love, we are grateful for many things. For your presence, for your care, for your love. Today especially we are grateful for the life and love of Marvin Gates, for what he has meant to this family and these friends, his patience and the communities he's been a part of. May we take that part of him that has inspired us with us and share it with those around us in the world. We ask this in your name. in your grace, and in your love. Amen.